Welcome to your new favorite show on the NGBN.TV network. This is Decades. My name is Chris Rubio, and I'm going to be your host for tonight. This is a great show where we're going to have someone in their 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s, and we're going to bring up topics that you normally wouldn't talk about, but that's the whole premise of the show. Let's agree to disagree. First off, I'm going to bring out our fantastic editor, director, producer, cameraman, everything. Give it up for Sub 60 Ed. What's up, Ed?
Yo, Rubio, what's going on, man? Glad to be back. Ready to get this show started. I think we have another fun-filled one here. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to one of our NGBN brothers, Chris Fontana.
Yes.
I just got my Go Primal shirt today. You guys, Chris Fontana, Go Primal USA. Make sure to check him out. Got some good merch over there. Good coach, just a good all-around guy. So make sure to go check him out when you get a chance.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's bring out our panel. Let's start with we'll start with the old guys. Number one, let's go with Jay Gaskill. Jay is an Idaho native. He's a recently retired judge. He's an outdoorsman and a fine wine connoisseur. Give it up for the judge. What's up, Judge?
Nada. Good to see you, Rubio. Missed you.
Always. It's been a solid how long has it been? 22 hours since I've seen you. Next up, we've got Bill Geiser. He resides in Tampa, Florida. He's a serial entrepreneur and an innovator of wearable tech, and he has two outstanding sons. Geiser, what is going on, my man?
Gentlemen, how are we?
Fantastic. Let's go to another Idaho native. Give it up for Jim Gingrich. He's a cybersecurity consultant, enjoys outdoors and lots of guns.
How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Let's move on to Joe Nolan. Joe represents our 30s. He resides in Philadelphia. He's an entrepreneur spirit, works in real estate and small business finance at a tech startup, and his community involvement. Give it up for Joe Nolan. What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's up, jabronis? Happy to be back.
And last but not least, we've got a very good-looking young man. His name is Cruz Rubio. He's a college student athlete. He likes arguing, tacos, hiking, and hanging out the beach with chanclas on. Give it up for Cruz Rubio.
Howdy.
All right. So as you guys all know, we have a little text thread that we kind of spread around, have some good jokes, maybe a meme here or there. And I actually sent this first link that Ed's going to put out. And I said, the world has officially gone mad. And that's the title of today's episode is the world has officially gone mad. And we're going to discuss each little clip that each panelist member has sent in to producer director Ed. Ed, what's the first one? Let's see it.
You also plan to make important investments to address the roadway safety crisis, including the critical funding that would accelerate the development. And this is an area I've written to you about of the use of female dummies in crash testing. This will start to fight the gender inequity among vehicle safety and crash victims.
This is one of those things that when I saw it, I legit wish I had hair because I would have pulled it out. And I thought to myself, this can't be real. Bill Geiser, you're laughing. Did you think the exact same thing?
No, I actually thought it was real. I mean, I think, the one skill set that progressives have is what I call reality bending. You know, they are really good at just kind of twisting reality, and she's pretty good at it. Give her a hand.
Judge, would you agree with that?
Well, I don't want to, but it does seem a bit on the absurd side. Although I think, to be fair, that they probably couldn't actually show up if they didn't have maps. So the girls had to get there.
All right, Joe Nolan, what do you think? I see you're analyzing your down by your keyboard. What's going on there?
I mean, it definitely makes for a funny spectacle, but I think it is interesting. Supposedly there is some kind of gender bias because like they test everything based off like a male anatomy, and that leads to worse outcomes for women. But I don't know if like that's the right messenger for that message in that setting. So
and it's 2023 right now. Why can't we just say the dummy identifies as a woman and go from there, Jim?
Well, my question is, why is she wearing a condom? And second of all, maybe it's because of all the crazy people she's around. But yeah, it's definitely absurd. I think we're all agreeing with that. I don't understand that, why that's even a topic.
and I read some comments on that clip, and it was one of those where have we as a society got things that are so easy in life now that we're just creating problems? I think that can be somewhat of an issue. Cruz, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is just an issue that doesn't even need to be resolved by any means. I mean, just go deal with other stuff in politics.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I think everyone just has to agree, and with shockingly we actually did on this, is okay, no, this is just stupid. We're not even entertaining this idea. I think that's what we needed to go with. Bill, you wanted to say something?
Well, I mean, I just think it kind of ties into a broader narrative on the whole gender issue, and they use any thing they can pick up to kind of keep the narrative alive. And I guess she thought crash dummies was a useful ploy.
Spoken by a well-represented, well-represented gender for crash test dummies.
Her narrative much service. I mean, with the purple hair and the yellow and the red thing. I mean, it was a pretty colorful presentation, but didn't make sense.
Well, on the bright side, I don't think all males should be dummies. I think there should be some female dummies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, hey, there's men and women in the front seat. Like, you should probably test both proportions. That's not crazy. It's probably just some like regulatory decision that needs to be made. Like, it's
but then
it's not exciting. It's not tied into a larger narrative unless you make it.
Are they testing for Ed?
They're like 500 pounds. You just build a 500-pound test dummy so that they can feel equal to. It's just like, I mean, I think it's just like a slippery slope between like just like being basic and going the extra mile to like make sure everyone's inclusive. It's just, I feel like it's just a little unnecessary.
50% of the population 500 pounds, Cruz?
No, but I mean, God forbid nowadays. I mean, Jesus, who knows what's going on in the world? I mean,
so we could agree that there's some line between 500-pound people and women.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I'm saying, you're saying that we should include women. Why not include everybody? Why not go ahead and include the 500-pound person and little people? Why is there no little people crash dummies? I mean, come on.
He's got a legit point. Ed, let me get. Can you pull up anyone that I want, or do you have a certain order? If so, I want the judges next. You're on mute.
Whatever you want and however you want to do it.
Let's
and
go.
Cruz, thank you. Oh no, I got to thank Cruz for representing. Why aren't the little people represented? Yeah, yeah, sub 60s.
Judge, why aren't you raising your hand, Judge?
Shush.
All right. Speaking of the judge, let's have the judge's clip or picture, whatever he sent in.
I can't do clips.
What is that from?
Who knows?
Ed, can you hold it up one more time because it was right behind
Someone
my
read it
camera?
out. I can't.
The settlement reflects Fox's continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards, Fox News, and it says can't even tell the truth after settling. Okay, Judge, so talk to me about that.
Well, they just paid almost $800 million to settle a lawsuit over their fake reporting, even though they knew it was wrong, and they still come out and say they have the highest journalistic ethics. It's absurd.
Okay, but then someone on the flip side could say, well, didn't CNN 3 years ago just pay off Sandman? Like, was it 275 million because they drug him through the grass or
Sure,
through the weeds?
I don't think they had the same quote afterwards.
Well, they didn't. I don't think they made any quote.
Right. That's my point.
Rubio, is it possible they're both lying to us?
Oh, no. Joe, this is probably the third time that you and I will agree on something, but I think it goes back to the narrative that we've talked about 100 times, is that with the media, at this point, is there even a mainstream media outlet that you can even trust that you could throw farther than Cruz's 500-pound test dummy? I mean, the answer's got to be no. Jim, what were you going to say about that?
I agree with the judge for the first time ever. we have covered this in several different manners, but there's not integrity. The judge represents a little more liberal and I'm more conservative, but it's the same on both sides. That there's they're running their narrative. They don't give a shit about the truth most of the time.
And as much as $800 million is a settlement, which is, oh my God, a lot, that's not going to stop. I mean, does anyone really think that's going to stop them? Joe, what do you think?
No, I think the biggest thing that came out of it is they fired Tucker Carlson because he embarrassed the brand with some of the text messages that came out in Discovery. I mean, he was their biggest star, and then he's out after criticizing management. I mean, it's the one thing you can't do when you're part of this media ecosystem is criticize the money.
What do you think about that, Bill Geiser?
Well, actually, I'm with Jim. I agree with the judge on this. I think right now in this world, trust is the most scarcest commodity, and nothing comes close to it. We don't believe anybody or anything, and it doesn't matter whether it's Fox, CNN, mainstream media. They're not reporting news. They're selling a narrative because that's the way their business model is predicated. And anyone that thinks that they're hearing the truth from those guys is crazy. So no, I'm not surprised at it at all. I think whether it's conservative mainstream media or liberal progressive media, it's all one and the same. They're all telling a story that lines their pockets, and that gives us the truth.
And you bringing up truth is a great segue. But first, we're going to go to our first commercial. Ed, take it away, bud.
Hello, my name's Ian Hill. And when I'm not training to be the oldest man to play NCAA Division I college football, I'm the CEO of NGBN TV. Our mission's pretty simple. Educate, equip, entertain, support, and inspire men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's a one-stop shop for all that a man in his middle ages needs to be his best. So won't you come and join us? Come and be a part of NGBN TV. Now back to our show.
Welcome back to your new favorite show on NGBN.TV. This is Decades. My name is Chris Rubio. I've been the host. You have Joe Nolan, the judge, Bill Geiser, James Gingrich, and Cruz Rubio. Bill sent us off with a great little line about trust. And I wonder, I've said it numerous times over this last 2.5, 3 years, whatever it has been, is there any major thing, corporation, government thing that you could even trust anymore? We'll start with you, Cruz. What do you think?
To be truthful, I would say no, but I also haven't been keeping up with much of the news just because of the fact that you never know what you're going to hear and you can't really trust anything.
Jim? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Jeez, Cruz told me that earlier. I'm just starting to feel like I fit in. I haven't had trust in media, government for a lot of years, and now it's just gotten so far to either side that a lot of people are feeling that it's hard to find the truth. It's also scary, and you know, you sometimes hesitate to get in a debate because you don't know, even if you fact checked your facts, if they're facts. It's become pretty crazy.
Judge, what are your thoughts on that? Because today there was like a New York Times article that came out. I think it was 30 pages long on Fauci, and it basically said how it was. They were asking him questions like, "What about school closures?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I never advised that. We did something wrong in America where there shouldn't have been this many deaths of happening." And everyone's like, "Well, you kind of really did."
Well, I think that's kind of a unique situation because it was a pandemic we hadn't really faced before, and nobody knew quite what to do or when to do it. But as far as somebody you can trust, obviously the third branch of government is extremely trustworthy. The judiciary,
biased,
maybe excluding the ethics of our Supreme Court.
Joe, would you agree with that?
Listen, I'm pretty jaded. I've grown up in a world where all of our norms are falling apart, and our institutions that built the wealth for my parents is crumbling. But without fail, there's one corporation I can count on every single year, and that's that the fucking Dallas Cowboys are going to choke before divisional playoffs.
All right, on that, Ed, can you give us a clip from? Let's go from Joe.
Of Florida fathers face attempted murder charges after deputies say they opened fire during a violent road rage fight and ended up shooting each other's young daughters.
You're right, I'm doing the call.
The explosive argument happened in the Jacksonville area on Saturday. Officials say tempers flared as the two men drove erratically around each other, both driving with their families. One of the men pulled out a handgun and tried to shoot out the other's tires, instead hitting a 14-year-old girl. The second father returned fire, striking the other's 5-year-old daughter. Both girls are expected to survive.
Bill Geiser, I know you want to comment immediately coming from your state of Florida, but we got to talk to Joe first because he brought this clip up. So go ahead, Joe.
I mean, that to the same week that clip happened, there was a boy that was shot because he rang the doorbell of the wrong house. There was a woman that pulled into the wrong driveway. The person chased her down and shot her. Another person got into the same model car, realized it was the wrong one, said sorry. The person chased her down and shot her. Like, you know, you guys for ridiculous clips that just make you say, what the fuck? And, you know, what the fuck is going on? Like, we're an armed society that's terrified of our own shadows, and we're seeing the consequences of it.
Do you think any of that has to do, Joe, with the fact that we've been under lock and key for 2.5, 3 years and everyone's gone stir crazy?
I mean, if you've been under lock and key, it's because you've wanted to. There's been no restrictions for pretty much any of this pandemic.
What?
Wait, hold on. Is Joe okay?
Huh? I mean, for like 2 years now, everything's been open. Schools have been open, like no mask requirements to travel. I mean, like everything's pretty open. Yeah. But
no mask.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people shooting each other like it's fucking
I know, but I'm just saying,
highway.
is that something that's an offshoot of it? Jim, you look like Bill. I'm going to get to you, I promise. But Jim looked like he just passed gas on Mars. What's your thought?
Well, I knew Joe and probably the judge had turned the narrative into guns. Gun violence isn't real. They're not. These are people with mental issues. And I would also say, what a horrible shot if you're shooting at the tires and hitting someone inside. But I do agree with what you were alluding to. I think the division and the news, all these things we've talked about, have created an aggression that wasn't there before. I feel it when you're out and about. There's certainly a tension that I don't recall having prior to COVID.
I would agree with that 1,000%. Bill Geiser?
Well, I think it's the same old tired narrative of selecting a couple white guys who shoot each other and ignoring the probably 150, 200 black kids that shot each other every single fucking weekend in every major city in America, and no one says one word about it. So it's hypocrisy. Stop it, Joe. You can do better. You can pick a better topic.
I'm pretty sure there's more shootings in Jacksonville than Chicago.
I'll bet Philly's right up there too.
No,
no one
listen,
leaves Chicago. No.
It's one of the things we're good at: poverty and shooting.
Chicago's got the crown.
Yeah, I think Chicago's taking it. Judge, you want to comment on this?
Well, I can't believe that any lockdown from the pandemic encouraged people to go out and shoot at each other. It just seems very far-fetched to me. I think gun violence has been increasing in the United States year after year after year after year. Obviously, we lead all the civilized nations in the world on killing each other with guns. So I agree with Jim on one point that certainly mental illness falls into that, but ever since Reagan, we've decided that mental illness is not a priority. And if you're not going to deal with those issues, then you've got to do something about the guns. And I think that probably if two black guys had shot each other's daughters in Florida, it would have made the news also.
I'm not sure. Jim, you had a point to make?
Yeah, I have to kind of defend myself a little more on this topic. One thing that I don't know if Joe or the judge even are aware of, but there's somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 incidents a year where people protect themselves with their legally owned firearms. And also when the judge a couple episodes ago said it's a leading cause of death among kids, if you do a little tiny bit of digging, they included 18 and 19-year-olds in that. And out of the 18 and 19-year-olds, one, they aren't kids, and two, goes to what Bill said. Most of those were gang related inner city. So that's really creating a narrative that scares the shit out of people when that really isn't the case. It's suicide, it's gangs, and the 18 and 19-year-olds aren't kids.
Cruz, do you want to wrap this segment up?
Yeah, actually, I have a good point to make. I lost a cousin, or not an extended family member, last year to gun violence, and there was one thing that the shooter did have, and it was a mental disability, and an easy access to get a weapon through wish.com. So I do think that there is a huge mental health issue around weapons, and I think that people are quick to pull a trigger nowadays.
I would not disagree on that at all. Ed, take us to our next commercial, please.
Whatever you're trying to do with your life, whether you're trying to grow or heal something or get to that next level, it all comes back to your mind and understanding that your mind and your nervous system create a system. So I'm Carlin Fisher. I'm a mind sculpting consultant and speaker. I have a 90-day course I'd love to share with you in the link. Take care.
Welcome back to your favorite show on the NGBN.TV network. This is Decades. My name is Chris Rubio. I'm the host. We've got James Gingrich, Cruz Rubio, Joe Nolan, the judge, and Bill Geiser. And of course, the man behind it all, Sub 60 Ed, is dominating, editing, directing, producing. He literally just does everything. We're not exactly sure what else he does, but we know he does everything. So thank you for that, Ed. Ed, can you pull up a James Gingrich's clip, please?
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders.
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview because it seems like it's going in a particular direction.
Well, you're a medical professional.
I am a medical professional.
So you don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids, or?
Again, I'm a physician and I use medication. You're choosing exploitive words. Drugs I give to kids.
I'm choosing a
chemical
word that was in a dictionary.
That's not a correct term for puberty blocking.
I could look it up on my phone, but I'm pretty sure if I looked it up,
you can look it up on your phone.
It says medical definition: the administration of a drug to bring about a marked reduction in the body's production of androgens and especially testosterone.
And I'm saying, as a pediatrician who takes care of hundreds of these kids, when you use that terminology, you are being malignant and harmful.
So, James, that clip is from Matt Walsh's movie, What is a Woman? You can stream it on the Daily Wire. I think that's the only way you can watch it right now. But it is a quite eye-opening film. By show of hands, how many have seen that film, What is a Woman by Matt Walsh? Just Jim and I? That's it? Okay. So, Jim, talk to us about your clip.
So that show was disturbing, and I first want to say I think Rubio likes to send me this stuff, pull a string and wind me up to make sure I have early cardiac arrest. But I did some research on Lupron and what they're doing. And if you watch the whole movie, she talks about it being like a pause button. You're just pausing puberty. Well, there's no such thing as that. If they take this drug any length of time, they will not be fertile, female or male. It's not reversible. It wasn't even approved until 98 for prostate cancer, and they're finding between 2013 and 43,000 events getting osteoporosis cancer. So to me, kids, I don't remember them having rights. You can't vote, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't even choose which parent to live with when you get a divorce. And suddenly we're saying the kids have rights to change their gender, and we're castrating them with chemicals. It just seems insane.
Yeah, I mean, that it goes along with the title of The World Has Officially Gone Mad. Joe, you're kind of nodding over there. What's your thoughts?
I'm not going to really engage with the premise. Trans people exist. They're real. They're not up for debate. You know, you don't debate whether or not, like, I exist or you exist. Trans people are real. There's medicine that we have that allows them to be them, feel themselves. And it doesn't hurt me or you. I don't think the state has any room or say in it. And no offense, James, but I trust the AMA that says these are safe, applicable, and lead towards good outcomes for these.
The FDA has not approved Lupron for juveniles for gender dysphoria.
I know. Physicians, the ones that are dealing with kids.
Well, watch the movie. You make it sound like I have something against trans people. I'm saying children, when their bodies are changing, their minds aren't.
And you're quoting Matt Walsh, so I don't think you have a problem with trans people, but you're giving someone a platform that does.
Because I care about children and don't want to see them wake up at 30 years old with cancer and depression, and the suicide rate is through the roof for these people that start it young like that. I'm not saying they don't have a problem. I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to change their gender. I'm saying maybe they wait till they're an adult, because there is no long-term study on this. This is doing damage, and you'll see who's right in about 10 years.
Bill Geiser.
I do believe there are people who were born with their gender confused, call it. So on the topic of transsexuals, if somebody is of the age of consent and wants to go down that path, I'm all for it. It's the young ones before the age of consent where the issue lies, and that's a tough one. I just think it takes people time to figure out what they want to do in life and what they want to be in life. We don't know that intuitively the day we're born. So I think there needs to be some sort of age leveling that we can agree on. And then, if someone wants to go down that path, good for them. I'm all for it. I support it.
I think we just need a little bit of common sense on this one. Like you said, okay, if 18 you can buy a pack of heaters, you can buy tobacco, you can go to the army. I think some states you probably buy beer, or you can vote, but you can't. They're saying as early as 10 now. They're saying, oh, this kid's all of a sudden this girl's a tomboy. Let's have a mastectomy. It's just one of those things. Like this is just beyond. I think if we just used a little bit of common sense, now, Judge, would you agree with that? That let's at least get the age limit going.
No, I don't agree with that. I think that it's an individual situation. I think you need responsible medical personnel involved, responsible parents involved. But I think you can also do a lot of damage by putting off till the age 18 or 16 or 25 or 40. I think there's just as many suicides, or there have been in the past, from people that are trans that haven't been able to change, as there are from what Jim says they'll regret in 10 years. So I think when you're going through the teenage years, especially, that's going to be very important. I think it's on an individual medical and parental basis.
But going back to your teenage years, Judge, and I know that was, Jesus, good God, a long time ago for you. Don't you remember making? You and Jesus graduated together. What about issues of when you were 13, 14, 15, 16, even go to 17 and 18? You never made any bad decisions or bad judgments or thought, I want to do this. I have 100% want to do that. And if you look back at it 5 years, or in your case, 75 years later, and go, holy Jesus, I'm glad I didn't do that.
Well, sure, I had a lot of bad judgment. I didn't have condoms, for one thing.
You couldn't use a lambskin or something?
I was Catholic, so you know what my birth control method was. But I think you've got to be really, really certain if you're going to do that. And I don't think that a lot of people are going to experiment at that unless they're really, really certain and they're mentally just devastated.
Well, what if the doctor's telling them that it's a pause button and that's not the case? That's my point. That has nothing to do with trans. I'm saying they're being told things that aren't true. That, hey, we can try this for a while, and then, if you don't like it, you don't like it. There's no real studies, and again, not approved by FDA for the treatment. So to me, that's scary. We're experimenting on children.
Cruz, what's your thoughts on this? Or who's just talking? Is that Judge?
I was just going to say, I haven't watched the movie, so I don't know, but everything I knew about the drug before was represented as a pause, not as something that was permanent. If you quit taking it, you quit taking it.
Judge, I know a guy who can get you to the movie, so we'll make sure you watch it. Cruz, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I don't really know. It's a difficult situation because obviously I think we live in the United States of America and it's a free country and you can kind of do what you want, but at the same time, you have to kind of put the priority and safety of children at hand here. So it's a weird and difficult situation where it's like, yes, I want people to have the right to do what they want to do, but at the same time, there has to be a line where okay, are we crossing it now?
Go ahead, Joe.
I think, the stats sort of speak for themselves, whether or not there's a problem. If you look at the NHS over in Canada, they have really good stats because it's socialized medicine. But what they show is that of the people that start hormone therapy, 12.5% stop for some reason, whether it doesn't take or they regret it, but it is reversible, according to all the medical literature. But then of the 8,000 people that were studied in a study, less than 1% expressed regret. And for most, it was only temporary of people that actually had surgery done to change their form. So I think the way the gates are set up right now, you do have this trial period. And then if this turns out to be something that is who you are, there is a further step you can take. I think that is working. And, I can acknowledge my own ignorance. It's not something that affects me. Pretty sure I'm a guy, he, him, full cisgendered male. So I've really got a lot of things going for me. And I can only imagine if just because of the way I was born, like I was disadvantaged in life. So I hope the state stops, because I'm really concerned that these transgender bans are happening that literally target one person in the entire state. To me, that's a huge overreach of state power and literally bullying on an interstate level.
Well, number one, I read that study about the 5,000 people, and that study was done after 5 years. So do you have any regrets after 5 years? It's like asking someone, do you have a bad tattoo? Do you have any regrets after 5 years? No, man, I got it when I was 23. I'm 28 now. You might want to ask someone they're 35 or 40. So that like Jim was saying, there's no long-term studies. That literally can't be yet. And I think that's the big problem that a lot of people.
No, but there's a lot of graves that show what happened when there's no access.
Well, you're going to dig them up and find out they're trans. How are you going to do that? I'm legit asking. How are you going to find out if someone's trans?
How are you going to do it? How are you going to do a long-term study if you don't have this going on?
You do, though.
Well, we just said there's no long-term studies. Well, it can't be if it's got.
Well, then how can you do? But that I think you're playing into Jim's point there. Then you're saying there's no long-term studies. How can you prove? But how can you prove that it's going to be good?
Hey, there are long-term studies. Lola was put out by the Kooks in 1984. Transgenderism and transvestites have been part of popular culture forever. If they're still kicking and still touring 50 years later, it's probably okay.
What bill were you talking about? Were you saying that they're banning trans or they're against trans? Which law are you talking about?
I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
The third branch of a government that the judge spoke of is suing Tennessee for their ban on transgender hormone treatment, saying no person should be denied access to necessary medical care just because of their transgender status. So the Department of Justice, the federal, is starting to sue states that are banning this. And again, I feel like everybody keeps shifting off the point. I'm worried about children. There isn't long-term studies. I'm worried about the effects of this, where we're basically doing a mass experiment on people. And gender dysphoria is a mental condition. We're treating it physically with a drug that they chemically castrate criminals with. So to me, that seems crazy.
Bill, you look very stoked. Do you have a comment?
Well, I was just thinking about a situation I read about, I think it was a week ago. And if I remember correctly, it happened in a high school in Wisconsin where a biological male who is in the process of transitioning went into the ladies' bathroom and exposed his penis to several young freshman girls who were freaked out, and their parents were equally freaked out. And honestly, I don't blame them for that. What strikes me as odd about this is it seems like in less than, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 years, we as a nation have transitioned from a very powerful Me Too movement. Remember that? Me Too? All about women and women's rights. To what looks like to me right now is de facto legalization of sexual harassment. What do you say, Judge? I mean, that's I mean, someone exposing themselves.
Bill, that's just a mental illness problem. Like we shouldn't make trans people illegal. We should just help the people with mental illness.
But what about the females who find that objectionable? Do they not have rights?
I think taking someone who's a streaker or like an exhibitionist and saying because they wore women's clothes they're trans is pretty disingenuous for
How do we make this transition from the Me Too movement to literally what is sexual harassment or what used to be sexual harassment? And I'm not aware of any legislation that's changed on this.
Well, let me comment on this because this happened in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and I was actually there about 10 days ago, and it's a very cookie cutter town. I went to go visit basically a relative of mine, very cookie cutter, beautiful homes, just mom and pop, Norman Rockwell, all that stuff. And the high school where I was literally not even 1,000 yards from where I was staying. Beautiful brand new school. And the story is that this 18-year-old senior went into the shower with 4 14-year-old girls. And that's issue number one. Issue number two was the girls obviously complained. The issue number three was the school never put out a statement at all to anybody. The parents had to go in and like make the public thing become more knowledgeable on social media. And that's why the Sun Prairie, Wisconsin school board had a huge meeting last night where all hell broke loose. And so it's one of those things where the school district didn't say a thing to anyone. And it's almost like you're looking at it and saying, okay, are they just trying to cover their ass here? Because you can't say anything because then you're a transphobe of something like that. And it becomes the fine line of, okay, is this guy a trans and he wants to just shower by himself or with the girls? Because they even told the girls, if you read it, they said, if you have a problem with this, we can take you to a different locker room. This is their locker room. And that becomes the big issue. So is this guy a trans, okay, where we have an issue? Or is he, Joe's comment, where he's just a streaker and he's trying to get his rocks off by looking at 14-year-old girls? And so are you allowed to ask? What can you ask? I mean, that's where it becomes a very, very fine line. Jim?
Well, I agree. That's what's tough. How do you protect those that are abusing this new, sensation where all these people can choose their gender? I mean, you're certainly going to get it abused. Every law, every civilization will find loopholes. So we aren't protecting that percentage of people. If I had a teenage daughter and she hadn't seen a penis yet or been around that, and some guy walked in and did that, I would be pissed off at the school. That's a parent's right to decide when and how to educate, not a school to shove genders together and say, hey, you deal with it.
I think this is a full-on assault on women. I mean, we're seeing it in women's sport right now, where biological men who are trans are supposed to be able to compete against women in women's sport under the banner of equity. But what I don't see happening is any men's sports complaining about biological women coming into their sport. You don't hear that. You don't hear any complaints at all. You know why? Because they get dominated by the stronger males. And this is what's happening in women's sport. And I know it intimately well in the sport of swimming, where I've spent 40, 50 years either involved as an athlete or as a coach or as a developer of training tools for it, and have extensive connections through the sport. And there are a lot of angry women who are getting displaced by men in their sport. And it's just not right. I mean, it's wrong.
I think that is a perfect way to end this episode. I know, Ed, we still have bills, but we're going to put it up to the next episode because we're going to start with these every week. I think this is going to be our first little appetizer for each episode. You guys did absolutely fantastic. Bill, Judge, Jim, Joe, Cruz, Ed, you can come back on now. Before we agreed to disagree on a lot of these, which is good. I like that. Tell me who was the winner, and thank God it's not Jimmy Mack because he's not here.
No, it was a tough. It was a tough one, Mr. Rubio, but I think I'm going to give it to Mr. Gingrich this week.
Oh,
for his protecting the children, getting fired up. Judge almost had him with one of his comments. His quote at male and female should both be dummies. His joke earlier almost had it, but Jim pulled it out in the end. So
thought I was going to use my Cowboys joke, but maybe next time.
That was Joe was actually pretty.
Be
funny.
nice to the Cowboys. Come on, Joe.
On that note, everybody, cheers! Another fantastic episode. We agreed to disagree.
All right, guys.
And all those watching, make sure you practice this at home and share it on ngbn.tv and on YouTube. We're out of here.
Peace out.
Cheers.
Ed, that's bullshit. I gave you a shout out.